the capacity that comes along with the image of God. We are now on a lifelong internal search to discover all those qualities, all those talents, all those gifts, the equipment, if you will, that God has placed in all of us, that we would become those individuals that represent not just life, but life more abundantly. So part of this conversation is about self-discovery. And I want to talk to you today about something that I believe will be another breakthrough for all of you that are watching. So why don't you share and like and subscribe, hit that notification button, as Chandler, my grandson, often tells me and reminds me that I'm not doing. So like, subscribe, hit that notification button, share. Someone that you know, male or female, will benefit from this conversation. Now we're going back to Proverbs 31. And we're going to look at verse 29 to 31, and then we're going to pick up our conversation concerning maximum identity. Maximum identity. Proverbs 31, verse 29 says, "Many daughters have done virtuously, but you excelleth them all. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain or fading, but a woman that fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her," watch this, "of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates." Maximum identity. To discover maximum identity, you have to become what I call a barrier breaker. In order to become a barrier breaker, you must overcome some emotional history. That means that emotional history that has to be overcome might be connected, or probably is connected, to events that are very significant, but not events that have propelled you forward, but events that have somewhat at times, from time to time, held you back. In order to be a barrier breaker, you must break the bondage of past failures. Now, the simple way to break the bondage of past failures is to make sure that every time you fail, you don't do what's instinctive and natural, that which is to push the failure immediately to the side. In order to break the bondage of failures, you must study the failure. You must be accountable and responsible for all your actions and all your words. In other words, you must take full credit, if you will, for your participation in the failure. If you're an individual that blames your failures primarily on the actions of others, and you responded and failed to the actions of others, then you will remain bound by the failures in your life. You have to be able to discern brand new hallways of access that God provides. Now, there lies a tricky equation there, because there are times when opportunities present themselves that we can kind of think or want them to have been sent by God. But the reality is we must learn how to get a word from the Lord so that we can discern whether this is a divine opportunity or one that the enemy has sent to distract you from this journey called purpose. You see, there are hallways of access that God will provide. And when God provides these hallways of access, they will lead you to doors of opportunity. You see, the negative internalized history that many of us have to battle, that negative history has produced an inner voice, something I call an inner voice, something, a conversation that you have with yourself regarding the challenges that you have faced. Some you have succeeded and some you failed. So there are times when the events of our lives produce an inner voice. And that inner voice, yours and mine, continually reinforces our identity. And it's not the identity that God has designed for you. Now, one of the big problems that we have in reaching our maximum ability and maximum identity, being a barrier breaker, is this: we place too much weight and influence on opinions from people who've not come close to producing what you've been created to do. An opinion from someone who has no expertise, an opinion from someone who has not even identified their own abilities, an opinion from someone who has, their life is one of limitations and always finding themselves missing opportunities because their inner voice tells them when the opportunity is presented that it's not for them. They're not led by the Holy Spirit, but they have plenty of opinions concerning what you ought to be doing and what your destiny is. Personally, I don't take advice from people who are failures. Personally, I don't take financial advice from people who are broke. Personally, I don't take ministry advice from people who are still sitting on the sidelines. It is imperative that you understand that opinions based on your gender, ladies, some of those have been internalized, producing an individual who lives an intentionally limited life. Some of the opinions said to you about being a woman have been internalized to such an extent that there are opportunities that you don't think are even available to you based upon your gender. And this thing runs right down to race, ethnicity, family, economic stratas that we live. Someone has given you an opinion, and if you're not careful, you have internalized that opinion, and all of a sudden, you don't see yourselves as a person who has unlimited capacity or unlimited capability, but now you see yourself dwelling within the confines of an opinion from someone who has never accomplished much at all. You need to be careful when the only thing anchoring an opinion is the passion by which it is given. Because I've found that people that don't have much productivity have very loud, aggressive opinions because their passion is the only thing that gives their opinion any apparent power. See, you can't approach each day to survive. You've got to approach each day to excel. Opinions are often not connected to responsibility. People will give you an opinion that they want you to follow, but they don't have any connection to the outcome or the consequences or the results that come from you following the opinion. So they give you an opinion, if you will, in a test tube, untested, untried, and you, in your enthusiasm, perhaps at times, have followed the opinion of someone that had no expertise and essentially no relationship with God, so there was no leading there. And you internalize that opinion. You see, people have opinions because they are disconnected to your destiny and the results of their opinions. Man, you ought to do this. Girl, you ought to do that. They don't have any responsibility in the consequence. But you may find yourself internalizing that thing to the point that you become passionate about something coming from someone who has no productivity to support what they're asking you to do. Many people treat opinion like it is truth. Many people do that. But opinions are never connected to consequences. Truth is. Jesus said in Matthew 16:13, "Whom do men say that I am?" What is the opinion in the street about me? You see, some said he was Elias, some said he was not some other prophet, but they were not responsible. They were not connected to his responsibility nor to his destiny. So they had plenty of opinions about who he was. I need you to hear me. Jesus was unreactive. That his disciples, those that followed him, except for Peter, had been swayed by opinion to the point where they were not sure about his identity. But Jesus was unchecked by those opinions. You see, when people's opinions were concerning Jesus, their opinions had no connection to his destiny, to his purpose, to his mission, and to his assignment. Certainly not to his gifting. They were opinions concerning him. But Jesus never internalized their suggested identities for him. I need you to see this. You may not be familiar with this. Go to Matthew chapter 16. Matthew 16. And we'll go down to verse 13. Watch what it says. When Jesus came into the coast of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, "Whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?" What's the word? And they said, his followers, his disciples, the ones that should know him. They said, well, some say thou art John the Baptist, some Elias, another word for Elisha, others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. He says to them, "But whom say ye that I am?" The only one that answered was Simon Peter. He says, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." Those that had opinions about him had no connection to why God sent him in the first place. He said, "Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God." So watch what happens here. Jesus did not internalize, watch this, the suggested identities of those who were not certain about his purpose. When it concerns your relationship with God, you have got to live by faith and not others' opinions about your God. You've got to have an identity with God that assures you of being connected to him, faith in God that supports the fact that despite opinions about him, like Peter, I know who you are. And watch this. And because of Peter's certainty in who Christ was, Jesus turns around and says to him, "Simon Peter, listen to, he says, blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood hath not revealed it unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven. And I say unto thee also, that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And I will give unto you the keys of the kingdom of heaven." So all of a sudden, Simon Peter is separated because what he knows about Christ, he understands about himself. And then Jesus begins to speak words of destiny because, watch this, Peter understands who his Christ is. He's got this relationship that is unswayed by opinions of other people concerning his Lord. The more you know about Jesus, the more you will discover concerning yourself. So it is the truth, not opinion, that shall make us free. If your truth, here comes trouble, is not God's truth for you, then your truth is a stronghold, not a breakthrough. Let me say it again. The truth, not an opinion, shall make you free. If your truth is not God's truth for you, if your truth is not God's truth for you, then your truth has become a stronghold, not a breakthrough, because only the truth shall make you free. We've got to live by faith. We've got to accept and know the truth and its liberating power. Your own private truth is a limited truth, but the truth of God concerning you has unlimited capability, unlimited capacity. Your truth is how you feel right now. God's truth concerning you is eternal. His truth concerning you will not fail. His truth concerning you means he'll work all things out for your good, because his truth for you includes his purpose for you. But when I have my truth, which is a truth, God sees it as your opinion concerning you and not the truth concerning you. I know I'm going to get written. Your truth is not his truth. The only way your truth can be his truth is if his truth is your truth. And in order for that truth to work for us, we've got to live by faith. We've got to know the truth. We've got to understand the liberating power of God's truth. I am, many people have said, who God says I am. Now let's cut that a minute. That's simply because God said it. But I am who God says I am because I live it. If you're going to be who God says you are, you must live this thing. Truth ignored is truth discarded. Man. So I can't say that I am who God says I am and not live the truth of God's revelation concerning you, about you. Because if I don't live the truth of God, I am ignoring the truth of God. And if I ignore the truth of God, I am discarding or throwing away that truth. Because truth must be lived. As the Bible often says, truth must be walked in. When you and I believe opinions rather than what God says concerning us, we create internal barriers, internal strongholds of resistance, strongholds of resistance to change, strongholds of resistance to progression, and strongholds to resistance of victory. You see, when I fall into the trap of thinking progress is perfect, then I fall into a trap where I'll be vulnerable to opinions. But I'm telling you right now, you've not read one biblical character who's made progress from the time God called them to the time they reached their destiny, where progress was absolutely perfect, except the Lord himself. And in that progress with Jesus, he ran into some problems. He was always victorious, but it was not a problem-free existence. So this thing that we're talking about, this capacity and this capability, you can create barriers for your own capacity and your own capability. You can get a I can't, I won't, it's too much, what am I going to do kind of mindset. And then all of a sudden, you'll look back over the years and see one opportunity after another that you should have responded to, that for nothing more than a response to an inner voice from an opinion or suggestion that was given to you years ago that made you think that something about you did not merit you even trying to maximize your days. You found yourself setting up capacity barriers for yourself, strongholds that prevent maximum identity. Someone who builds a barrier for themselves. But this Proverbs 31 woman that we are talking about today, this 10 times better woman, is indeed a barrier breaker, because as you read Proverbs 31 and read the things that she does day in and day out, they appear to be culturally, especially from our point of view, many of the things that men would do. But this 10 times better woman has obviously broken the barrier. And in breaking the barrier, she's not broken it because of her gender. She's broken it because of her productivity and because her cause is right. This Proverbs 31 woman is not a limited person. She's not limited to accepted culture roles based on her gender. There's nothing in Proverbs 31 that indicates that because she is female, that she's held back in anything that she does, because her work speaks for her. She is plugged into, if you will, the Adam in her. Her mindset is without limits. And that is not a sexist statement. We know how God created, in Genesis, how God created man and woman. He makes Adam, takes a rib out. That rib, he makes a woman. So there's woman in Adam and there's man in Eve. And because of that, you find yourself being able to do things that are not traditionally female and not traditionally male. A capacity that you have to discover if you are not wounded and hindered by what people think your ethnicity offers you as opportunity. Oh my goodness. You need to plug into the Adam. And some of the brothers need to plug into the Eve in them. This woman that fears the Lord in Proverbs 31. The Bible says she shall be celebrated. She shall receive the fruit of her hands. That her work will praise her. That because of her work, people will celebrate and recognize her accomplishment. You've got to break the barriers suggested to you inside of you. You will break them. You will break them. When you break them on the inside, they will be broken on the outside. Philippians 4:13 overcomes any doubt you have in your mind. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That once I discover all that God has created me to be, and I then begin to lean on the strength of the Lord, to do as the disciples were instructed, follow him so I can become transformed. When I realize that my mind is what God is using as the center of his operation to transform my life, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, by the renovation of your mind, by moving things around in your mind, by changing the way you see life around you working. Where you saw barriers last year, you see opportunities this year. Because when you're a barrier breaker, you understand because you're created in the image and likeness of God, you have unlimited capability and unlimited capacity, and you must discover all that God has created you to do. And watch this. Where you thought last year you only had one choice, you would discover that you have several. You will discover that there are there's creativity in you, there are accomplishments in you that you have not yet even approached. That the things that you fear doing, the things that the process of it seems daunting, that going back to school, that writing that book, that writing that play, that composing that music, that getting that degree, all those things that the internal voice quietly, silently tell you that's too much. That voice that tells you it's too late. You've wasted your life, that it's too late. That you've missed your season, that it's too late. That opportunity will not return to you again, that it's too late. When you let that inner voice convince you that what God has said to you that you can do all things is a lie, then you create a barrier and a stronghold to your own progression. You cannot maximize your identity, allowing, watch this, the bricks of failure to become the houses of your present and your future. You cannot allow the roadways that, yes, for many of us are littered with failures behind us, taint the way you see the road in front of you. You cannot expect every day as a survival day. You must wake up every day desiring and intentionally excelling in every day. This is the day the Lord has made. You shall rejoice and be glad in it. God needs you to discover him in you so you can understand that every day that you wake up, it is a day of rejoicing for you, a day of accomplishment, a day of productivity, a day when your work will praise you. This is extremely important for you to do. Maximize identity is an intentional move of God in your life, an intentional move of you in your life with God. Maximize identity is not just stumbled into. It is an intentional endeavor to walk in purpose, to solve the problems that you've been created to solve, to overcome the gender, the ethnic, the economic restrictions that opinions have placed upon you and you have accepted as identity. that God has made you in his image and his likeness. And in that image and likeness, he said, you will be fruitful, you will multiply, you will distribute, and you will subdue anything that seeks to hinder the maximized identity that God has created you to enjoy. It is extraordinarily important that you understand that God has not created you, commanded you, and not given you ability to do what he has commanded. When he says be fruitful, it's a commandment. God never commands you without giving you ability to obey. He says be fruitful, multiply, distribute. You've got to have it to distribute it. But also he says subdue. Subdue anything that would seek to hinder you maximizing your identity every day of your life. I'm almost out of time today, and I want to encourage you. Some of those internal voices have been hindering. It could have come from a parent. It could have come from a friend. An event in life could have spoken to your spirit. And the voice of that event, the voice of that individual, continues to run quietly, silently, but victoriously, because you have become convinced in your own mind now that there are barriers to your success, barriers to your prosperity, barriers to your progress. It is important for you to understand this, that once you break the barrier of denial and understand your part in whatever failures you participated in your past, and then you go to school and learn and gain the wisdom, watch how I say this, gain the wisdom that comes from failure. When you can look yourself in the face and say, yes, they did this, but I did that. When you can stop saying they made me and you said, okay, and even some of you where you were put in positions long before you were able to defend or articulate your problem. And yes, it happened. It was not your fault. But now it is your responsibility to break free of the bondage that the enemy tried to place on you. It wasn't your fault, but now it is your responsibility. Are you going to live the maximized life? Break free of all the barriers, all the bondages of past failures, past disappointments? Are you going to be the maximized identity that God has created you to be? The 10 times better. And now it's time for you to stop comparing yourselves to other women, brothers to other men. Because the Bible says in Proverbs 31, many have done virtuously, but God has equipped you to excel them all. I'm out of time, certainly not out of word. Thank you for joining me on 10 Times Better. And remember this, faith acts like a thing is so, even when it's not so, that it might be so. God bless you.